This is one of the most obscene photographs I've ever taken. I saw this boy in a camp where there were 800 children dying, and some of them dropping down and dying while I was there, and being revived with, some injection in the throat, which wasn't going to work. I saw children crawling around with the insides of their rectums hanging out of their backsides, and flies on. I cannot tell you. I've seen so many children suffering. Nobody should impose this suffering on children. It's the worst crime of humanity, particularly dying of starvation, which is one of the most cruelest deaths you can imagine. I felt ashamed. It had nothing to do with photography. It was to do with being a shameful, passing moment in history.
We, the lean cows of Pharaoh's dream, the Western world, ears of corn deaf to the blight of hungry children. We, a nation set ablaze by the rain, the Western world, a coalition of sun-eaters who swallowed the dawn of a great nation. We, the birthright that cost us a plate of porridge, the Western world, Esau's hands, Jacob's voice. I wonder, did Harold Wilson's conscience weigh 2 million dead children heavier when he endorsed the blockade? I wonder, what is the exchange rate of a Biafran ruin to a Soviet rubble? War is an ancient typewriter with no backspace key, an underground bunker with no room for regret. Yet, years after the pogrom, there is a saloon of grieving mothers still placing the hairs of beheaded daughters. At night, the entire eastern region still sleepwalks. My great-aunt Lucy would not bury her dead son. She still breastfeeds his bones. I don't want him to starve in the afterlife too, she says. In Nnewi, people run mad barefooted. They have been running ever since. In Umporo, there was no cause for celebration, but the town was painted red. A man held his brother's hands, but not to pray. A man held his brother's hands. It was the only part of him they could find to bury. One after the other, Tito Taylors drank Molotov cocktails so they too could join the burning. When did freedom become a war crime? At what point does a boundary become a battle line? Who would have thought that a better half could mean something more than a wife, until an air raid splits a woman in two at Otuocha Market? That a severed tie could mean a dismembered limb and not a diplomatic fallout? That we harvested ecstasy from the courtrooms of men who died making love to allegiance? That in Oji River there was so much hemorrhage at the waterfront we called it a blood bank? Every nameless body we drew out of water we called Moses. Every nameless body we drew out of land we gave names. Shipwrecks of dry land gave stories. Ant hills of the forest mourned them like a lost clan. One name woke Obu Inani Imbanyi Sinafo Otune Puta Tupanya Burumune. Brother, we do not have to be born by the same woman to have the same mother. Carry them inside us, in hollow places, in crevices so cold we shudder at the thought. A moment silence for those who died screaming. This is how we choose to remember.
The so-called rising sun of Biafra is set forever. It will be a great disservice for anyone to continue to use the word Biafra to refer to any part of the East Central state of Nigeria. What a pity. How are the mighty fallen, and in such a cowardly way. If he has done a Hitler, probably we could have thought, he is at least a man of courage. He didn't do a Hitler. Hitler took a poison, died, and ordered his body to be burned up. at least because he had, he knew what he has done. Ojukwu ran away and left these poor people that he has led into such, suffering, such, abject position. Just left them, and now probably because with the money he has amassed outside, I suppose he will go and live in, in joy and plenty.
But nonetheless, the very fact that Ojukwu comes back must mean a reopening of the old wounds. It must be a symbol of the war that took place.
No, actually, I don't think it is. I don't think in any way it is. First, the war. The war was not Ojukwu's war. I happened on the Igbo situation at the time of the conflict. I did my duty to the best of my ability, and I am glad that Nigerians generally recognize this fact. One man could not have held the entire Nigeria and her allies for 3 years. The Igbo people felt threatened.
So a lot of people will say, but you were leading the first one. Yes, I led the first one. And I will say to everyone, I led proudly the first one. I don't think a second one is necessary. We should have learned from that first one. Otherwise the dead would have been to no avail, would all have been in vain.